Welcome to the Work Wonders podcast, where we simplify HR for small business. I'm Angela.
And I'm Susan. Let's dive into today's episode and see what you've been wondering about.
In today's episode, we're going to be talking all about feedback, the failures and how to fix them, and explaining more for you about what might be relevant for your business. So let's get started. This is the Work Wonders podcast.
Hi, Angela.
Hi, Susan.
Now, something I'm sure we have both noticed in workplaces is the boss avoiding giving feedback.
Oh, yeah, it's not always fun.
No,
especially when
well,
it's negative feedback.
Yeah, exactly. And even if it's positive feedback, it's often not given because, you're too busy. Everyone's doing the day-to-day.
Yeah.
And you might notice that someone's done a good job, but you just don't get around to telling them. So that's probably pretty important too, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely. People love to hear when they're doing a good job, and it's just as important as when they're needing some improvement.
Exactly. So let's run through. We've got 5 things that we've noticed in the workplace, what we're calling feedback failures. Failures, probably a bit strong, but things to look out for and what you could probably do instead. So you want to kick off?
First one I think is when it all happens too fast, so if it's an uncomfortable situation anyway, they don't want to give the feedback. Some managers can kind of just do it too fast and almost like a drop and run sort of situation. So that means that they're often unprepared, or the employee or the staff member might be feeling a little bit, what just happened? I'm not really sure what to do with that information. And they don't get the chance to ask questions, or there's no sort of explanation. So I think that's a bit of a failure, that one.
Yeah, definitely. So what would you do instead?
Oh, well, I think it needs to have some preparation. It doesn't have to be a lot, but if you're going to go to the effort of giving someone feedback, have a thought about that beforehand and consider what you're going to offer, and certainly allow them the chance to ask some questions before you leave the room, and don't leave it just for times when you don't have a lot of time.
Yeah, allow time, but don't wait too long.
Yeah.
So that, brings us to the second one that I've noticed is people giving the feedback too late.
Yeah.
So put it off. It's really important that you give feedback close to the behaviour. It's just like with any other training and development, or even, how you want to raise your children, I guess.
Yeah.
If someone's continually coming in late, for example, and that's really bugging you, you want to talk to them one day when they've come in late, but when you've got enough evidence to talk to them about it.
Yeah, because it might be fresh in your mind, but not in theirs if you wait too long.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good way to put it. So what else have you noticed, Angela?
The other thing I think of, Susan, is it can be a little bit emotional for people.
Oh, yeah.
Again, if it's not an easy thing, it doesn't feel comfortable and natural to you to do that, it can result sometimes in escalation. If there's emotions involved that's not necessarily helpful, that can get in the way of the communication. And so it can then become about those reactions rather than the feedback itself. So you don't want to be tempted to, shout out something to someone. You certainly don't want to be putting them down, that sort of thing. It needs to be factual. It needs to be helpful information that's going to help them to understand why it's required, why it's not working, and how they can improve.
And, I think one of the biggest things leading to that emotional firing from the hip type reaction, that response, is often our frustration and the frustration that comes about from seeing something happen over and over again. So the best way to attack that is obviously, as we said earlier, take action early, not wait until it's bubbled up to the surface and you're ready to explode.
Yes, and if it is something that's frustrating you quite a lot and you are feeling quite emotional, take some time before that meeting or whatever you're going to have with the employee to just settle yourself down a little bit, remind yourself just to talk about the task at hand, and hopefully that will help you be less emotional during that sort of conversation.
Yeah, and I imagine if you're doing that, then you're not making it a personal attack on the person either.
Yeah.
You're talking to them about the behaviour rather than making it sound like it's all about them.
Yeah, and you can't assume that that person has a really good understanding of it not working well. So if you go in all guns blazing and saying, oh, it's so frustrating that you're just not getting this, it might not come across well because it might be a surprise to them. They might just want the chance to know and, oh, okay, and how can I fix that? And it can be a much more productive way if you're just going in there to say, look, yeah, but did you know this is happening and this is why and we need to fix it.
Yeah, exactly. And then it becomes more like you're sitting beside the person. You know, the two of us are going to fix this.
Absolutely.
Not it's all you. You've done the wrong thing. You need to fix it. You.
Yeah. Bottom line, I think, Susan, if everyone's emotional and you're treating your employee like just shouting that information at them in frustration, it's really not going to help improve their performance anyway.
Hi, it's Susan here. Did you know my business, Balance at Work, also does executive coaching? If you're looking to develop the emerging leaders in your business or build new skills in your leadership team, simply get in touch via the Work Wonders website, workwonderspodcast.com.au. A similar thing in terms of improving performance is if the feedback you're giving is irrelevant. So say something hasn't happened the way that you think it should happen, it's important that you make sure that you research the details of why it didn't happen. I mean, obviously that depends on the degree of deviation from your expectations, but you need to know that you've got the facts before you give the feedback. But another part about giving irrelevant feedback is it's important to reflect on your own motivation. Are you giving this feedback because you've just woke up on the wrong side of the bed? Or is it really relevant to the work and what you expect from that person?
And having an objective view, is that employee the only one that's involved in that process or task? Or could it perhaps not have been communicated to them properly? Or is there other things or systems or equipment even that's letting them down? So having a really full picture.
Yeah. So then the final feedback failure that we've noticed is where feedback is useless. Can you explain that a bit?
Yeah, so useless in thinking like, well, it's not helpful to the person. So think of a case where a manager might be going to completely the wrong person.
Well, that would be pretty useless, yeah.
They might be talking to the wrong person. Or if they are, going to their employee and saying, I need you to do this better and I need this done this way and, just do it. And they're not leaving the employee with the time or the resources or even the training to make those changes possible.
Yeah, so you can't really expect the feedback to be effective if the person you're giving it to doesn't have that training, doesn't have the skills or the background needed to complete the tasks in the way that you want, especially if you're giving it quickly.
Yes.
At the wrong time when they're in the middle of something else. And you don't have time to give them the training or the adequate background to why they're doing, why you want them to do it a particular way. Layer on that some emotion.
Yeah.
And we can see why feedback
is not going
to work. So I would say that if you're avoiding giving feedback because it hasn't worked for you in the past, then maybe reflect on some of the things we've been talking about. What do you think, Angela?
Yeah, absolutely. And having that whole picture, so it doesn't just start and end with that one communication, that one piece of feedback. It's about knowing what's happening. So like you said, reflecting on your own emotions and your own whatever's going on for you, but also what's going on in your entire business. What's impacting this behaviour or this outcome from this person, and having all that information in play before you go to do something about it, but also afterward, following up with them, allowing them the chance to ask questions and clarify and giving them what they need so they can fix it.
Well, on that, I like to say when you're giving feedback, there's some other F words that you need to remember.
Okay.
Yeah. Don't get worried. I don't think, there might be some that are 4-letter words. But so the first one of those is to do it face to face. oh my goodness, don't send a text or
Oh,
a
no.
WhatsApp message or even an email.
No.
Yeah, if possible, do it face-to-face so that you're having a human-to-human conversation.
Yeah.
The second one is to give feedback frequently.
Yes.
So don't save it all up for the performance review, or don't save it all up until you've really had enough and you're just going to drop that bomb and run.
Yeah, I agree
You
with
don't want to see that. If you're giving feedback on a regular basis, it's going to seem normal. It's what's
Yes.
expected.
Well received, much more easily well received. Yeah.
Yeah, hopefully. Yeah. Speaking of well received, my next one is to be fair. So that's the third F word. Be fair and consistent. Take time to recognise good performance and not just the problems.
Yeah, great.
Number 4 is to make sure that the feedback conversation happens when you can focus on what you're talking about. You want to focus on the person with you and how they're responding and listen to their answers and make sure you do it without any distractions.
Yeah, good point.
My 5th F word is facts. So stick to the facts. As we've talked about, don't let emotions overrule you and influence the way that you're delivering the feedback. If you are feeling angry or upset, then you're going to need to wait until you're in a better frame of mind.
Yeah.
And finally, the important thing is follow up. So for feedback to be effective, it really requires follow up. And if you're expecting something to change because of the feedback you gave and it doesn't happen, then you need to try again and follow up on that feedback.
That's a great list, Susan. How about we pop those in the show notes?
Yeah, sure, we'll do that.
We hope you got some helpful takeaways from today's episode where we talked all about giving feedback. What's something that you might take away from today? Perhaps you'll think about being less emotional or more prepared for your feedback meetings. Perhaps you will think about making sure you do some follow-up afterward and make sure your staff have the resources and information and training they need to fix what's required. You can find the show notes for today's episode on our website with all the great tips that we've shared today. You might have thoughts or even tips yourself around what works for you in giving feedback in your business. Why not share it with us? Go onto our socials, our LinkedIn page is Work Wonders Podcast, and share it with us all.
Thank you for listening to the Work Wonders podcast. Hit subscribe now so you never miss an episode. And if you enjoyed today's, why not tell your friend and maybe even leave us a review? So what have you been wondering about? You can pop onto our website, workwonderspodcast.com.au, and let us know. We'll talk to you again soon.